The greatest reggae song ever recorded is not by Bob Marley. It is this hidden anthem, built on a secret rhythm track that has never been properly heard. I have the original studio breakdown. Stick until the final minute to witness the raw, isolated moment. Sly and Robbie became the rhythm twins and birthed a spiritual weapon, long before audiences called them the rhythm twins. Long before their names became a kind of sacred shorthand for excellence in reggae instrumentation. There existed a moment. The moment when an obscure Rastafarian anthem found its way into the cracks of Babylon and echoed outward, continent to continent, until it felt less like a song and more like a prophecy that had accidentally taken human form. That anthem, born from the fiery hands of Winston Holness, whom the world knew as Niney the Observer. His music did not simply travel. It marched, it glowed, it breathed, and it carried inside it a kind of musical uprising that could only have been triggered by the combined forces of Sly Dunbar's volcanic drumming and Robbie Shakespeare's hypnotic bass. But to reach that moment, one has to move backwards first. Not gently, not carefully, but with the same sharp precision that Sly Dunbar used when striking a rim shot that could cut through steel. Before Niney the Observer had become the architect of militant roots reggae, he was still Winston Holness, a young producer navigating the unpredictable creative storms surrounding Lee Scratch Perry. That early apprenticeship sharpened him, hardened him, and filled him with the kind of restless ingenuity that would later explode into the creation of monumental works like Blood and Fire. The 1971 detonation that lit up Jamaica with a power few producers of the Cretan era could match. The record was more than a hit. It was a declaration that Winston Holness had stepped fully into the arena as Niney the Observer, a man who heard music not as melody but as burning testimony. And it was during this period of discovery and transformation that he first crossed paths with two teenage studio musicians who were not yet legends, not yet cultural giants, just hungry, unstoppable talents, named Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare. Sly Dunbar's drumming had already begun to break rules, even as a youth. He had this unteachable relationship with time, the ability to stretch it, crush it, twist it, and command it. Observers often said that Sly didn't merely play rhythms, he forged them like blacksmiths forge metal. Robbie Shakespeare, on the other hand, played the bass as though it were a living creature, responding only to his heartbeat. His lines were heavy without being clumsy, melodic without being soft, spiritual without being abstract. Separately, they were prodigies. Together, they were a natural disaster disguised as a rhythm section, and Jamaica had no idea what was about to hit it. Yet even as these two were becoming the engine of countless productions across Kingston studios, working with outfits like Bunny Lee's Aggravators and Channel One's Revolutionaries, it would take another journey through the fire of Rastafari before destiny placed them inside the same spiritual chamber as an unheralded vocal trio called the Jewels. Glassford Manning led the group with a voice that carried the ache of exile and the conviction of prophecy. The Jewels had sung through the rocksteady era, leaving recordings with Coxsone Dodd, Rupie Edwards, and Lee Scratch Perry, drifting from producer to producer like wandering scribes searching for the one man who truly understood the fire burning in their lyrics. They found that man in Niney the Observer, his studio, brimming with militancy and devotion, became their sanctuary. Niney saw in Glassford Manning and the Jewels something that other producers had missed, which is a raw, unfiltered, spiritual urgency. Their lyrics didn't just speak of Rastafari, they bled it, lived it, demanded it. And so Niney began crafting songs for them, the first of which was the respectable but relatively modest, his first song titled Prophecy Call, powered by the reliable muscle of the Soul Syndicate Band. It was good, strong, even, but Niney was chasing something larger, something seismic. He wanted a roots anthem that didn't simply praise Jah, but summoned him, a piece of music capable of vibrating through the skin of Babylon itself. That is why, when he gathered the musicians for the next recording, Niney called upon the two forces he trusted most, Sly Dunbar, and Robbie Shakespeare. He knew what their playing could do to a rhythm. He knew what their hands could carve out of silence. What he did not know, not fully, not yet, was that the track they were about to build together would become one of the greatest Rastafarian anthems ever whispered across the Caribbean Sea. It did not start with the vocals. It started with the drum. Sly Dunbar sat before his kit and summoned a technique that had already begun to haunt Kingston's recording spaces rockers. This was not drumming for dancers. It was not drumming for lovers. It was drumming born out of resistance, shaped by the tension between oppression and awakening. Rockers was thunder sharpened into geometry. It was the sound of a marching spirit. It hit with rim shots so precise they felt like lightning splitting a hillside. It rolled with hi-hats so fast they could mimic wind against metal. It settled into a pattern that was disciplined like a warrior, standing perfectly still but vibrating with contained force. Into that storm walked Robbie Shakespeare with his bass. No grandstanding, no theatrics. Robbie never needed theatrics. His genius was in restraint, in the thick, deliberate weight of every note. He placed each tone like a builder, laying foundation stones in holy ground. While Sly Dunbar's rocker's pattern rose like a prophetic trumpet, Robbie's bass dug into the earth and refused to move, anchoring the rhythm with a pulse. So hypnotic, it practically argued with anyone who tried to resist dancing. The two instruments, drum and bass, did not accompany each other. They conversed. They negotiated. They argued. They agreed. They became a singular organism. Then came the guitars, Ernest Ernie Smith, with lines that shimmered like light breaking through clouds, and Ansel Collins on keys, whose touches bent around the rhythm like vines curling around stone. The instrumental bed was not simply good. It was supernatural. It felt chanted before anyone even opened their mouths. When Glassford Manning and the Jewels stepped into that atmosphere, the song ceased to be a composition. It became a ritual. Their voices climbed through the rhythm like pilgrims scaling the steps of a temple. They sang of dreadlocked wanderers navigating Babylon's traps, of wicked men stumbling, of Jah children moving under divine protection. The lyrics were simple, but simplicity is deceptive when paired with spiritual gravity. The words felt like scripture disguised as a chorus. And at the center of it all was the invocation, Jah Jah. For those who heard it firsthand in late 1970s Jamaica, it felt less like listening and more like being inducted. The streets embraced it instantly. Rastafarians raised it like a banner. Sound systems folded it into their late-night gatherings until it sounded like the heartbeat of Kingston itself. Yet, although it caught fire in the hearts of ordinary people, it did not catch fire in the global marketplace. While Bob Marley soared across continents, while Peter Tosh captured international headlines, while Burning Spear carved his legend Niney the Observer lacked the distribution machinery to push this spiritual masterpiece into the wider world. And so the anthem glowed intensely but locally, its true power felt by those closest to the movement. But music has its own strange migration patterns. A year after its release, as though carried by the breath of Jah himself, the song slipped across the ocean and found refuge in England's underground sound system culture. There, in dimly lit warehouses and crowded street gatherings, selectors lowered the needle onto the record, and the room would change temperature. The rocker's drum, the Shakespeare bass line, the chanting of the Jewels. It hit England like a rediscovered prophecy. Sound system operators passed it to one another like a sacred text. The reaction was combustive. Soon, the track reached the ears of Trojan Records, which recognized its potential and secured a deal to push it into wider circulation. From England, it moved to America. From America to Africa. From Africa to anywhere that dreadlocked believers gathered to reason and chant. By 1979, the track was no longer a hidden gem. It was a rallying cry, a spiritual axis, a rhythm that could summon entire communities into a single vibration, a perfect synergy of Niney the Observer's militant vision, the Jewels' devotional fire, and Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare's unmatched instrumental alchemy. And yet the greatness of the track cannot be separated from the story of the Rhythm Twins themselves. Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare were not simply musicians playing on someone else's creation. They were, at that moment and forever afterward, the gravitational center of reggae's evolution. Their catalog, estimated in the hundreds of thousands of recordings, became the bedrock of reggae's golden age. If a listener knew 10 reggae classics, 5 almost certainly contained the fingerprints of Sly and Robbie. Their innovation was not accidental. It was not coincidental. It was the product of relentless experimentation, obsessive discipline, and the kind of chemistry that could not be manufactured. Years later, when critics tried to rank their finest rhythms, they gravitated toward famous works, Black Uhuru's masterpieces, the Mighty Diamond's celebrated recordings, Peter Tosh's iconic albums. But true disciples, the ones who understood how a rhythm could transform into a spiritual vessel, pointed instead to the obscure masterpiece forged under Niney the Observer's watch with the jewels. Because in that track lay pure essence, Sly Dunbar's rocker's technique at its most electrifying, Robbie Shakespeare's bass at its most soulful, Glassford Manning's vocals at their most transcendental, and Winston Holness at the height of his creative radicalism. The recording survives today not merely as a song, but as an artifact of a moment when Jamaican music ascended into something mythic. It captures an age when Rastafarian consciousness reached its deepest cultural penetration, when resistance and spirituality fused into sound, when young musicians walked into studios, not just to record, but to declare who they were in the face of Babylon. If the golden age of reggae could be crystallized into a single rhythm, just one, it would be this one. Not because it topped charts or sold millions, but because it captured the heartbeat of a people in motion. Now you know the truth. Tell me which legend from this story deserves more recognition. Share your own favorite underrated roots anthem in the comments. Follow for the next chapter of music history they kept from you.